Global economy in turmoil. World markets have nosedived after Republican Donald Trump emerged victorious in the race for the U.S. presidency. London's benchmark FTSE 100 index lost nearly 2% of its value in the morning session, while Frankfurt's DAX 30 tumbled up to 3%. U.S. stock futures also tumbled more than 5% after reports of Trump's astonishing win. Oil markets have also suffered losses. Stock markets in Japan, Hong Kong, and other Asian nations have also shed considerable points as a result of Trump's triumph in the U.S. presidential election. Financial experts have warned that the world markets could face further shakeups in the near future. Jeff Brown is a host and founder of China Rising Radio Sinoland, who joins us from Shenzhen to tell us what he thinks about Trump's win. Well, at this point, based on where you are located, how has China reacted to this, given the fact that Trump has said some obviously controversial statements regarding China?
Well, all in all, the Chinese, I think, would rather have Trump than Clinton. It was Clinton who devised the pivot to Asia to move the American Navy off the coast of China. It was not Obama. Obama picked it up after Clinton came up with the idea. Trump has said, as you mentioned in your introduction, he wants more reconciliation, less confrontation. He has threatened South Korea and Japan that they better pay a lot more for America's tens of thousands of soldiers and armaments in those two countries. He has also stated that he's ready to sit down with President Xi and President Putin and talk Turkey, cut a deal of some kind. So I think it's very encouraging. The Chinese in surveys in China preferred Trump to Hillary, so I think they knew something about Hillary that apparently many Americans also did. And I think it's really a good thing. I think we avoided a potential World War III scenario with Russia and China, and I think the Chinese feel the same way.
Well, I'm looking at some of the statements here by Trump, and to just summarize it, he has accused China of illegally subsidizing exports, manipulating the currency, something that Clinton also leveled against China, stealing intellectual property, and, of course, talking about economic losses and jobs blamed on Chinese exports. But you're painting a different picture, at least from the Chinese point of view. Do you think Trump, as you said, is going to make a deal on these issues?
Well, I think he'll at least sit down and talk to them. I mean, what you just listed, every president since the 1990s have been talking about the same thing. Trump has said, I'm going to raise the tariffs on China to 45%. He can't do that. He would be immediately, they would be immediately, slapped down by the World Trade Organization, which the United States created to help maintain its dominance with the dollar reserve currency. So everything he is saying is just standard mainstream press, verbiage to soothe Americans who have lost all their jobs to the Chinese. But Trump does have the capacity he said he wants 4% growth, which would be unbelievable. And I think that the Chinese would like to have America with 4% growth while China maintains its 6.5%. Again, a lot of that is rhetoric. And when he gets in the White House, unless he fires about 10,000 people from the military, the Department of State, the Department of Justice, and the Department of Treasury, there's an entrenched deep state that he has to deal with that will be fighting him tooth and nail. So I think it's great. I think he and Xi will meet, and I think it will be beneficial for the two countries as well as for the world.
Jeff Brown, thank you. Host and founder of China Rising Radio Sinoland, talking to us there. Thanks. Well, let's bring in Marcus Papadopoulos, publisher and editor of Politics First, who joins us. Well, let's see here. I'm not too sure where to start with you, but when it comes to foreign policy, there's a whole host of obviously topics we could talk about. Let's talk about first Russia and what Russia has in reaction to this win said, basically congratulating Trump, of course, saying ready to fully restore crisis-hit U.S.-Russia ties, and hoping that Trump could ease or lift the sanctions. And of course, this will all help Russia. Do you foresee the relationship there actually being almost a 360 to what it is right now?
Well, first of all, we need to be fair to Donald Trump. He hasn't yet entered White House, so we need to give him time. We need to give him time to see just what sort of American president he's going to be. That said, however, there is a curious and alarming degree of misguided optimism about Donald Trump, the likes of which we saw in 2008 after Barack Obama was elected as president. At that time, we heard talk from people on all different perspectives of the political spectrum that there would be a new foreign policy under Barack Obama, no more intervention in countries around the world. Well, we know how that turned out to be. Now, in regard to Mr. Trump and Russia, yes, Donald Trump has said that he would seek a more constructive relationship with Russia, which should be welcomed. But he hasn't said anything more than that. And we mustn't exaggerate what he has actually said in regard to Russia. We also need to take into consideration that Donald Trump is an unknown quantity. We don't really know much about him and his politics. Also, we must never forget the reality of American politics and the American economy. Even if a president, for example, like Donald Trump, wants to change America's relationship fundamentally with Russia, he would come up against formidable resistance on Capitol Hill, formidable resistance from the Pentagon, formidable resistance from the State Department, and of course various lobby groups, including the defense lobby. So we must take that into consideration when we talk about Donald Trump and what American foreign policy under him will look like, specifically in this case, towards Russia.
Well, you talk about this resistance. I'm guessing that these departments, like the Pentagon, like the CIA, are ready to deal with Trump. Now, the question is, if he gets the resistance, is he going to override it?
Well, that's assuming, of course, that Mr. Trump does not want to have wars of intervention around the world. If he doesn't know now, he soon will know that the American economy relies to a large extent on wars. Why? Because in wars, the armaments companies in America supply the American military with equipment and supply American allies with equipment. Also, American bombs and bullets, etc., which are used against a country, will result in the infrastructure of that country either being destroyed or seriously affected. That opens the way for American building companies to get contracts in those countries. So that is the reality of the American economy, and that is the reality of American politics. Now, I do not believe that Mr. Trump is unaware of that. I think he's very much aware of that. And as I said, even if he wants to try and reverse what American foreign policy has been for the last 70 years or so, he will come up against tremendous resistance. So I believe that Mr. Trump should be given an opportunity to show what sort of president he will be. But let's not live in cloud cuckoo land. Let's understand the reality about Capitol Hill, about the American corridors of power. And you can ask Palestinians, you can ask Cubans, you can ask Kurds, you can ask Cypriots about the reality of American politics. It doesn't matter who is in the White House. All that matters is that that system is entrenched and is being defended by the most powerful groups in America. As I just mentioned, ask a Palestinian, it doesn't make any difference if it's a Democrat or a Republican. It is always the same story. And also, let's not forget this point, that a politician will say one thing in opposition, and when they enter government, they tend to do the opposite. Before the 2010 general election in Britain, William Hague, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, was extremely anti-EU. He wanted Britain to leave the EU. When the Conservatives won the general election in 2010, William Hague became Foreign Secretary. It didn't take long for him to be a staunch supporter of the EU, so much so that Eurosceptics in Mr. Hague's own party were referring to him as the foreigner. So people who are getting quite excited about Mr. Trump really need to look at the lesson of William Hague in Britain.
Okay, thank you for that. Marcus Papadopoulos, publisher and editor of Politics First, talking to us there.